Hello and welcome to TRADOC In Depth. I'm John Harlow with TRADOC News Service. Today we're talking to the Australian Army's liaison to TRADOC, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Rowlatt, about Unified Quest. That's next on TRADOC In Depth. Colonel Rowlatt, what does your organization bring to the table at Unified Quest?
There's probably three things that we bring that are relevant to Unified Quest. The first thing is the relationship that we have between the US and Australia. That's something that's pretty unique, and it's unique in the sense that it's been forged over nearly 100 years of us fighting alongside each other. And what comes from that for Unified Quest is an ally who has many shared views, but at times differs in their view on things. But because of the time that we've spent in operations together, when that difference comes up, it's not dismissed, it's actually considered. And I've seen that many times here in this winter strategy, that where we have differed, it's been considered, and in some cases it's actually shaped an alternative outcome. The second thing would have to be our very strong experience base in both security operations and irregular warfare. Now that's come about from a long history of engaging in peacekeeping operations and dealing with insurgency within our own arc of instability to our north. That has been something of interest to many people here, because as we go into an era where we face non-state-based aggressors, the ability to tap into a knowledge base that has played with the dimension of security operations and irregular warfare is not something that should be dismissed. Finally, I would say our recent doctrine in Australia, which looks at a whole government approach to warfare, has certainly come to the forefront in terms of where Unified Quest is going. Our realisation in Australia that government needs a spectrum of options to be presented to it to deal with the spectrum of conflict is really the essence of where we're going now. And we have successfully applied it in the Solomon Islands, in East Timor, and we're being asked by America to actually apply it to other regions in the world. So in that respect, we feel that Australia brings a small but notable package to Unified Quest.
How does Unified Quest help your nation's efforts to generate and synchronize future concepts?
Probably the first way it informs it is based on our relationship with the United States and the history that we have in terms of fighting alongside each other. There's a pretty high probability that we'll be there with you at all future conflicts. It's important then that we gain some opportunity to get an insight into what drives your thinking, what motivates you in where you wish to take not just things such as grand strategies, but the future concepts for your army. To not have that insight would mean that for an ally who is there with you in coalition operations, we run the risk of going off on tangents which only undermine the end state. The other thing I would say is in relation to Australia's own arc of instability, the complexities which are considered by Unified Quest in dealing with non-state-based aggressors is very relevant to us. We see this quite frequently in the areas to the north and the surrounds of Australia, where we see nation-states coming to points of tension and instability based on non-state-based aggressors. So for Unified Quest 08 and its focus on the non-state-based aggressors, this is something that we will definitely look at and take back to Australia. But the way we take it back to Australia is through the very people we send here. We in fact take people from our Senior Officer Development Program. These are leaders at the General Officer rank, and they will be the ones, as part of our Senior Officer Development Program, who will not only influence the future direction of our doctrine, but actually set the conditions for the Army to posture itself for whole-of-government approaches to regional conflict.
After participating in the seminar working group, what do you take back to your organization and your country that will help them better prepare for future conflicts?
I take back a reinforcement of the relationship that we have with the US, the fact that I was able to participate in what could only be considered to be very deep discussions about something so important as a grand strategy. That reinforces the relationship we have between the United States and Australia, and given the fact that it is highly probable that we will continue to go into theatres of operation together, I was able to draw out what I refer to as grease points and rub points. Grease points are those things where we're in unison, we're in step with each other. That's a good thing. And we set those things aside. But it was the rub points that I was looking for. And they're the things where either our views are different, our approaches are different, and that might be through doctrine or just sheer capability. But at the end of the day, we have to work as part of a coalition force. And so being able to identify those rub points is great, because we can say, well, okay, if we differ, why? And what can we do to remove that rub?
Sir, how important do you think it is for all of these different agencies to be participating in Unified Quest?
It's essential. It is absolutely essential. At a time when we're trying to deal with non-state-based aggressors, it is difficult to take just a confrontational approach to these sorts of things. Government these days needs to be presented both conflict-based and non-conflict-based solutions. But to do that, one needs to change the mindset to a whole-of-government approach. Now, that's not an easy thing. To achieve that state, the conditions must be set where one has freedom of movement across all elements of national power. This particular unified quest is probably going to do that. It's going to set the conditions by involving State Department, academia, non-government organisations and coalition members. We start to set the conditions where we can embrace the philosophy of working together. We can explore interagency doctrine, but most importantly, we can start to identify and truly understand what needs to be the interagency effects-based outcomes that government needs to apply an appropriate and enduring strategy solution to a particular conflict.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the TRADOC News Service?
Our world is becoming increasingly smaller through either linked economies and or linked cultures. It's important then to understand that when looking at a particular regional issue, there is the second and third order effect. Now that's both from an internal point of view as an interagency, but also an international perspective as well. Unified Quest is one of those few opportunities where we can bring together the various parts of the power of the United States government and key coalition partners and actually set the stage for people to forge relationships and ideas that will allow everyone to achieve a whole-of-government approach, and I would say a whole-of-globe approach to what is truly an unusual circumstance of dealing with non-state-based aggressors.
Colonel Rowlatt, thanks for joining me today on TRADOC In Depth. With the TRADOC News Service, I'm John Harlow.